Sarah Martinez stood 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighed barely 110 pounds soaking wet. When she walked through the gates of Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Paris Island for the first time, the drill instructors took one look at her and shook their heads. She looked more like a high school student than someone ready to earn the title of United States Marine. The other recruits weren't much kinder. During the first week of boot camp, whispers followed her everywhere she went. They called her names behind her back, making jokes about how she'd probably wash out before the first month was over. Some even started a betting pool on which day she'd quit and go home crying to her mama. Sarah had heard it all before. Growing up in a small town in Texas, she was always the smallest kid in her class. Teachers would look at her with pity when she struggled to reach the top shelves in the library. Coaches would reluctantly put her on sports teams, more out of obligation than belief in her abilities. Even her own family questioned her decision to join the Marines. Her father, a construction worker with hands like baseball mitts, had tried to talk her out of it over dinner just weeks before she left for boot camp. He meant well, but his words stung worse than any drill instructor's screaming ever could. He told her the military wasn't built for people like her, that she should consider something more practical, like nursing or teaching. But Sarah had dreams that stretched far beyond what anyone expected from someone her size. She had watched her older brother come home from his army deployment, changed and confident in ways she envied. She wanted that same transformation, that same sense of purpose and belonging. More than anything, she wanted to prove that strength didn't always come in the package people expected. The physical training sessions were brutal from day one. While other recruits struggled with the mental games the drill instructors played, Sarah found herself fighting a different battle. Every pull-up was a monumental effort. Every run felt like she was dragging anchors behind her feet. The obstacle course seemed designed specifically to highlight every physical disadvantage she possessed. Drill instructor Sergeant Rodriguez noticed her struggles immediately. He was a 20-year veteran with arms covered in tattoos and a voice that could strip paint from walls. During her third week, he pulled her aside after a particularly difficult training session, where she had failed to complete several exercises. His words were harsh but not cruel. He explained that being a Marine wasn't just about wanting it badly enough. The Corps had standards for a reason, and those standards existed because lives depended on every Marine being able to carry their weight. He asked her directly if she thought she was being fair to her future fellow Marines by continuing when she clearly wasn't cut out for the physical demands of military service. That night, Sarah lay in her narrow bunk listening to the steady breathing of her fellow recruits. Some of them snored softly, exhausted from the day's training. Others tossed and turned, probably having nightmares about the next day's challenges. She stared at the ceiling and wondered if everyone was right about her. The doubt crept in like poison. Maybe her father was right. Maybe the other recruits were right. Maybe even Sergeant Rodriguez was right. Perhaps she was being selfish, taking up a spot that should have gone to someone who actually had what it took to be a Marine. But as she lay there in the darkness, something else began to grow alongside the doubt. It was anger, but not the destructive kind that makes people lash out and quit. This was the kind of anger that burns clean and hot, the kind that forges steel from raw iron. She was angry at everyone who had ever looked at her, and decided she wasn't enough before giving her a real chance. The next morning brought new challenges, as every morning did at Paris Island. But something had shifted in Sarah overnight. When Sergeant Rodriguez called for volunteers to demonstrate proper form on an exercise she had failed the day before, her hand shot up before her brain could talk her out of it. The other recruits watched with a mixture of curiosity and second-hand embarrassment as she stepped forward. Some probably expected another failure, another moment that would confirm their assumptions about her capabilities. Even Sergeant Rodriguez raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her sudden boldness. Sarah approached the exercise with a focus she had never experienced before. Every muscle in her small frame was engaged. Every ounce of determination she possessed channeled into proving that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. The movements weren't perfect, but they were executed with a precision and intensity that caught everyone's attention. When she finished, the training ground was unusually quiet. Sergeant Rodriguez studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he gave a small nod and moved on to the next exercise without comment. It wasn't praise, but it wasn't criticism either. For Sarah, it was enough. Word of her performance spread quickly through the platoon. The betting pool about when she'd quit suddenly seemed less certain. Some recruits began to look at her differently, not with pity or amusement, but with something closer to curiosity. They started to wonder what else they might have gotten wrong about the quiet girl from Texas. Sarah felt the shift too. For the first time since arriving at Paris Island, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had what it took to make it through boot camp. The physical challenges hadn't gotten any easier, and she still struggled with exercises that others completed with relative ease. But something fundamental had changed in how she approached those challenges. Instead of seeing them as evidence of her inadequacy, she began to view them as puzzles to be solved, obstacles to be conquered through determination and smart thinking, rather than brute force alone. The transformation wasn't immediate or dramatic. Sarah still failed exercises, still fell behind during runs, still struggled with tasks that seemed effortless for larger, stronger recruits. But now, instead of giving up when she hit those walls, she found ways to climb over them or go around them. Her fellow recruits began to notice that while she might not be the fastest or strongest, she was often the most persistent. When others gave up on difficult tasks, Sarah kept working at them until she found a solution. When others complained about unfair treatment or impossible standards, Sarah quietly focused on meeting whatever challenge was put in front of her. As the weeks passed, the dynamic in the platoon slowly began to change. The jokes became less frequent, the whispered comments less harsh. Some recruits even began to respect her determination, though few would admit it openly. Sarah was earning something that couldn't be given or taken away, the grudging acknowledgement that she deserved to be there. The combat training phase began during Sarah's 7th week at Paris Island, and with it came new opportunities to prove herself. Unlike the basic physical training that had dominated her early weeks, combat exercises required more than just raw strength. They demanded strategy, quick thinking, and the ability to work effectively under pressure. Sarah discovered she had a natural talent for tactical thinking that surprised both her instructors and fellow recruits. During simulated combat scenarios, while larger recruits relied on their physical advantages, she developed creative solutions that often proved more effective than brute force approaches. The first major test came during a combat simulation exercise where recruits had to navigate through a mock urban environment while under simulated enemy fire. The course was designed to test not just individual skills, but also how well recruits could work together as a team under stress. Sarah found herself paired with Marcus Thompson, a 6'4" recruit from Alabama who had been one of the loudest voices questioning her presence in their platoon. Marcus was built like a linebacker and had the attitude to match. He made it clear from the start that he didn't expect much help from his smaller partner and planned to carry the load himself. The simulation began with their team tasked to secure a building and extract valuable intelligence while avoiding casualties. Marcus charged ahead with typical aggressive tactics, moving quickly and decisively toward their objective. But his approach immediately drew heavy simulated enemy fire that pinned down their entire squad. While Marcus and the others focused on returning fire and trying to overpower their opponents, Sarah studied the battlefield with different eyes. She noticed patterns in the enemy positions that others had missed, identified blind spots in their coverage, and began to formulate a plan that could get them out of their disadvantageous position. When she tried to share her observations with Marcus, he initially dismissed her suggestions. He was focused on the direct approach that had always worked for him in the past. But as minutes ticked by and their situation didn't improve, he began to realize that his usual tactics weren't going to work in this scenario. Sarah's plan was unconventional but brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to outgun their opponents, she proposed using their smaller numbers as an advantage. She had identified a route that would allow them to flank the enemy positions while staying hidden from view. It would require precise timing and coordination, but it offered their best chance of completing the mission successfully. Reluctantly, Marcus agreed to try her approach. Sarah took point, using her small size to move through tight spaces and concealed positions that would have been impossible for larger team members to navigate. She guided the squad through a series of careful movements that gradually repositioned them for a decisive strike. The execution was flawless. While the simulated enemy focused on their original positions, Sarah's team appeared from an unexpected angle and quickly overwhelmed their opponents. The mission was completed with minimal casualties and maximum effectiveness. Even the instructors monitoring the exercise took notice of the tactical innovation that had led to their success. After the exercise, Marcus approached Sarah with an expression she had never seen from him before. There was respect in his eyes as he admitted that her plan had been better than anything he could have come up with. He apologized for doubting her capabilities and acknowledged that he had learned something valuable about the importance of different perspectives in combat situations. Word of Sarah's tactical success spread through the training company faster than gossip in a small town. Suddenly, other recruits began to see her as more than just the small girl who was struggling to keep up. They started to recognize that she brought unique strengths to any team she joined. Drill instructor Sergeant Rodriguez also took note of the change in how Sarah was performing and how others were responding to her. During a private conversation after training, he told her that being a Marine wasn't just about individual strength or ability. The Corps succeeded because it recognized that different Marines brought different strengths to the fight, and the best units were those that learned to utilize every member's unique capabilities effectively. The combat training continued with increasing complexity and intensity. Sarah found herself repeatedly called upon to help solve tactical problems that stumped other recruits. Her ability to think outside conventional approaches became a valuable asset that others began to rely on rather than dismiss. During urban warfare exercises, she excelled at finding creative entry points and escape routes that others missed. In wilderness survival training, her smaller size allowed her to construct more efficient shelters and conserve energy more effectively than larger recruits who tried to power through challenges with brute force alone. Perhaps most importantly, Sarah began to emerge as an unofficial leader in situations that required careful planning and coordination. Other recruits started coming to her with problems they couldn't solve, seeking her input on everything from tactical scenarios to interpersonal conflicts within the platoon. Her confidence grew with each successful exercise and problem solved. The girl who had arrived at Paris Island doubting whether she belonged was gradually transforming into a Marine who understood her unique value and wasn't afraid to demonstrate it when the situation demanded. The physical challenges hadn't disappeared, and Sarah still struggled with some aspects of training that came easily to others. But she had learned to compensate for her physical limitations with superior preparation, strategic thinking, and an unwavering determination to find alternative solutions when the obvious approach didn't work for her. More importantly, she had begun to earn something that couldn't be taught in any manual or classroom: the genuine respect of her fellow Marines. They had stopped seeing her as a liability and started recognizing her as an asset. The transformation wasn't complete, but it was undeniable. During one particularly challenging field exercise, Sarah overheard a conversation between two recruits who had been among her harshest critics during the early weeks of training. They were discussing the upcoming final exercises that would determine who earned the title of Marine and who would be sent home. One of them mentioned that he hoped Sarah would be on his team for the final challenges. When his companion expressed surprise, the first recruit explained that having Sarah on a team was like having a secret weapon. She might not be able to carry the heaviest pack or run the fastest time, but she could solve problems that would leave others completely stumped. The comment filled Sarah with a pride she had never experienced before. For the first time in her life, people weren't just tolerating her differences or making allowances for her limitations. They were actively valuing the unique perspective and capabilities that came with being different from everyone else. As the final weeks of boot camp approached, Sarah knew she still faced significant challenges. The ultimate tests would push every recruit to their absolute limits, and she would need every ounce of determination and tactical thinking she could muster to succeed. But she was no longer the same uncertain girl who had walked through the gates of Paris Island months earlier. She had discovered strengths she never knew she possessed, and learned to turn perceived weaknesses into competitive advantages. Most importantly, she had proven to herself and others that being different didn't mean being less capable. The final weeks of boot camp brought the most intensive training Sarah had ever experienced. The Crucible, a 54-hour field exercise designed to test everything recruits had learned, loomed ahead like a mountain that had to be climbed. It was the ultimate test that would determine who earned the title of United States Marine and who would go home empty-handed. Sarah spent every spare moment preparing for the challenges she knew were coming. While other recruits focused primarily on building their physical strength and endurance, she took a more comprehensive approach. She studied the tactical scenarios they might encounter, memorized emergency medical procedures, and practiced problem-solving exercises until they became second nature. Her preparation paid off during the preliminary exercises leading up to the crucible. In one particularly demanding scenario, recruits were tasked with crossing a simulated minefield while carrying wounded teammates to safety. The exercise required not just physical strength but also careful planning and flawless execution under extreme time pressure. Sarah's team found themselves facing what appeared to be an impossible situation. The safe path through the minefield was too narrow for conventional carrying techniques, and the time limit seemed designed to force teams into making dangerous mistakes. While other teams struggled with brute force approaches that put everyone at risk, Sarah identified a solution that others had overlooked. She proposed using a relay system that would allow them to move their wounded teammates through the dangerous area in stages, with each team member taking responsibility for a specific section of the crossing. The approach required precise timing and absolute trust between team members, but it offered their best chance of completing the mission without casualties. The execution required Sarah to take point, using her smaller size to navigate the tightest sections of the safe path while guiding her teammates through each critical movement. Her voice remained calm and clear as she called out instructions, even when the pressure mounted and mistakes could have meant failure for the entire team. The strategy worked perfectly. Sarah's team completed the exercise faster than any other group, and with better safety margins than anyone had thought possible. The instructors monitoring the exercise made detailed notes about the innovative approach, recognizing that they had witnessed something special. But Sarah's most significant challenge came not from any official exercise, but from an unexpected confrontation with 5 of her fellow recruits. It happened during a rare break period when most of the company was engaged in equipment maintenance and preparation for the next day's training. The 5 Marines were all large, strong recruits who had excelled in the physical aspects of training, but struggled with some of the more complex tactical exercises where Sarah had shown her strengths. They had been watching her success with growing resentment, feeling that her achievements somehow diminished their own accomplishments. The confrontation began when one of them, a recruit named Davidson from Ohio, made a loud comment about how some people were getting special treatment because the instructors felt sorry for them. His words were clearly directed at Sarah, though he was careful not to mention her name directly. Sarah tried to ignore the comment and continue with her equipment preparation, but Davidson and his friends weren't finished. They began making increasingly personal and cruel remarks about her size, her background, and her right to be there alongside real Marines. The comments were designed to provoke a reaction, to make her lose her temper and do something that would justify their treatment of her. Instead of rising to their bait, Sarah continued working methodically on her gear. Her calm response seemed to frustrate the group, and their comments became more aggressive and confrontational. Other recruits began to notice the situation and gathered around, curious to see how the confrontation would unfold. Finally, Davidson stepped directly in front of Sarah and challenged her outright. He claimed that she had been lucky in the tactical exercises and suggested that she wouldn't be able to handle herself in a real confrontation with actual Marines. He proposed a test that would settle the question once and for all. The challenge was simple but daunting. Sarah would face all 5 of them in a hand-to-hand combat exercise, with the understanding that if she lost, she would admit that she didn't belong in the Corps and request transfer to a less demanding military branch. If she won, they would publicly acknowledge her right to be there and stop their harassment. Sarah knew she was being baited, but she also recognized that backing down would only make the situation worse. The challenge had been issued publicly, and how she responded would affect not just her own standing but also the respect she had worked so hard to earn from other recruits. She accepted the challenge calmly, asking only that the confrontation take place under official supervision to ensure fairness and safety. The request surprised Davidson and his friends, who had expected her either to back down or to lose her temper and make mistakes they could exploit. Sergeant Rodriguez agreed to supervise the exercise after hearing about the situation from other recruits. He was not pleased about the confrontation, but he recognized that sometimes these issues needed to be settled definitively rather than allowed to fester and undermine unit cohesion. The rules were simple. Sarah would face each of the 5 challengers individually, in standard hand-to-hand combat exercises. The matches would continue until one participant was either pinned for 5 seconds or acknowledged defeat. Standard safety protocols would be observed, and any participant could call for medical attention at any time. As word of the challenge spread through the company, virtually every recruit found reasons to be in the area during the scheduled time. Some came out of curiosity, others out of concern for Sarah's safety, and a few simply wanted to witness what they expected would be her humiliation and defeat. Sarah spent the time before the matches in quiet preparation. She reviewed everything she had learned about leverage, timing, and using an opponent's size and strength against them. She visualized each potential scenario and planned her approaches based on what she knew about each challenger's fighting style and physical capabilities. When the time came, Sarah stepped into the designated combat area with a confidence that surprised many observers. She looked small and fragile compared to her opponents. But there was something in her bearing that suggested she had not accepted this challenge lightly or without preparation. The first match was against the smallest of her 5 challengers, a recruit named Peterson who still outweighed her by at least 60 pounds. He approached the combat with obvious confidence, expecting to end the confrontation quickly and decisively. Instead, Sarah used his overconfidence against him. When he lunged forward expecting an easy victory, she sidestepped and used his momentum to send him stumbling past her. Before he could recover his balance, she had secured a hold that left him unable to move effectively. The pin lasted exactly 5 seconds, and Peterson found himself defeated by an opponent he had badly underestimated. The crowd of watching recruits murmured in surprise, recognizing that they might have misjudged what they were about to witness. The second match followed a similar pattern, with Sarah using superior technique and tactical thinking to overcome a larger, stronger opponent. By the third match, the atmosphere had changed completely. The recruits were no longer watching what they expected to be Sarah's humiliation, but rather witnessing something unprecedented and impressive. Sarah faced each challenger with the same calm determination and strategic approach. She didn't try to match their strength or aggression, but instead used their physical advantages against them through superior positioning, timing, and technique. Each victory was decisive and clear, leaving no room for argument or excuses. The fourth match proved to be the most challenging yet. Her opponent was Rodriguez, no relation to the drill instructor, a recruit from California who had been training in martial arts since childhood. Unlike the previous challengers who had relied primarily on size and strength, Rodriguez possessed actual fighting skills and experience. He approached Sarah with more respect than the others had shown, recognizing after watching the previous matches that she was far more dangerous than her appearance suggested. The 2 combatants circled each other carefully, each looking for openings while avoiding the mistakes that had doomed the previous challengers. The match lasted longer than any of the others, with both fighters demonstrating impressive technique and determination. Rodriguez managed to secure several advantageous positions, but Sarah consistently found ways to escape or counter his moves before he could achieve a decisive victory. The turning point came when Rodriguez attempted a complex grappling maneuver that required him to commit significant momentum to the attack. Sarah had been waiting for exactly such an opportunity, and she executed a counter that used his own advanced technique against him. Within seconds, their positions were reversed, and Rodriguez found himself pinned helplessly beneath his much smaller opponent. The 5-second count seemed to last forever, with every recruit watching in stunned silence as Sarah held her position against an opponent who theoretically should have been able to overpower her easily. When Sergeant Rodriguez called time, the crowd erupted in spontaneous cheers and applause. The final match was against Davidson himself, the recruit who had initiated the entire confrontation. By this point, his confidence had been badly shaken by watching 4 of his friends defeated by someone he had dismissed as weak and unworthy. His approach was noticeably more cautious and respectful than it had been when he first issued the challenge. Sarah could sense his uncertainty and used it to her advantage. Instead of waiting for him to make the first move, she took the initiative and launched a series of quick attacks that kept him off balance and prevented him from settling into any comfortable fighting rhythm. Davidson tried to use his size advantage to overwhelm her But Sarah had studied his fighting style during his previous training sessions. She knew his preferred moves and favorite techniques, and she had prepared specific counters for each of them. Every time he attempted to assert his physical dominance, she found ways to neutralize his advantages and turn the momentum in her favor. The match ended more quickly than anyone expected. Davidson, frustrated by his inability to gain any lasting advantage despite his obvious physical superiority, made a critical error in judgment. He overcommitted to a powerful attack that left him exposed and off balance. Sarah capitalized on his mistake instantly, executing a flawless takedown that left Davidson on the ground with no chance of escape. The pin was decisive and unmistakable, and even Davidson himself acknowledged defeat, rather than prolonging a match he clearly could not win. The silence that followed the final victory was deafening. Every recruit present had just witnessed something they would have sworn was impossible, just hours earlier. The small girl they had dismissed as dead weight had systematically defeated 5 larger, stronger opponents without suffering a single loss herself. Sergeant Rodriguez stepped forward to address the crowd that had gathered to witness the confrontations. His expression was serious as he reminded everyone present that what they had just seen was a perfect demonstration of why the Marine Corps valued more than just physical strength and size. He explained that Sarah had won not through luck or accident, but because she had approached each challenge with superior preparation, tactical thinking, and flawless execution. These were exactly the qualities that made great Marines regardless of their physical dimensions or background. The 5 defeated recruits were required to fulfill their part of the agreement. Each of them publicly acknowledged Sarah's right to be training alongside them, and formally apologized for their previous treatment of her. Davidson in particular seemed genuinely humbled by the experience and admitted that he had learned important lessons about making assumptions based on appearances, but the most significant change was in how the entire company began to view Sarah. The whispers and jokes that had followed her for months were replaced by genuine respect and admiration. Recruits who had never spoken to her before began seeking her advice on tactical problems and combat techniques. Her reputation spread beyond her immediate training company. Instructors from other units began visiting their training sessions to observe the small recruit who had gained such an impressive reputation. Some of them had initially been skeptical of the stories they had heard, but seeing Sarah in action quickly convinced them that her abilities were genuine and exceptional. The transformation in Sarah's own confidence was equally dramatic. The girl who had arrived at Paris Island uncertain whether she belonged had become a Marine who knew exactly what she was capable of achieving. She carried herself differently, spoke with more authority, and approached new challenges with the calm assurance of someone who had already proven herself under pressure. Her tactical innovations began to influence training protocols throughout the depot. Instructors started incorporating some of her problem-solving approaches into standard curricula, recognizing that her methods could benefit recruits of all sizes and backgrounds. Her emphasis on using intelligence and preparation to overcome physical disadvantages became a model for others to follow. The respect she had earned extended beyond her fellow recruits to include the drill instructors and senior Marines who supervised their training. They began to seek her input on training scenarios and problem-solving exercises, treating her more like a fellow professional than a recruit still earning her place in the Corps. Sarah's success also had a profound impact on other recruits who had been struggling with their own challenges and self-doubt. They saw in her example proof that determination and smart preparation could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Her story became an inspiration that motivated others to push through their own difficulties and find their unique strengths. The betting pool about when she would quit had long since been forgotten, replaced by speculation about what kind of military career awaited someone with her demonstrated abilities. Some predicted she would excel in special operations. Others thought she would make an excellent instructor, and still others believed she had the potential for significant leadership roles. During a quiet moment after evening chow, Marcus Thompson approached Sarah to thank her for lessons she had taught him without realizing it. He explained that watching her overcome challenges through preparation and intelligence had made him a better Marine and a better person. Many other recruits had similar conversations with her. During those final weeks, the formal recognition came during a company formation when the commanding officer specifically, commended Sarah's performance and innovative approaches to training challenges. He noted that she exemplified the Marine Corps values of adaptability, determination, and excellence in ways that would serve as an example for future generations of Marines. As graduation approached, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey she had completed. She had arrived at Paris Island as someone others saw as a liability, someone who would probably fail and go home disappointed. She was leaving as a respected Marine whose abilities were recognized and valued by everyone who had witnessed her transformation. The girl they had called dead weight had proven that true strength comes in many forms, and that the most dangerous opponents are often those who are consistently underestimated by others. The crucible began at dawn on a humid South Carolina morning that promised to be one of the most challenging days in every recruit's life. Sarah adjusted her pack one final time, feeling the weight of 54 hours of testing ahead of her. This final exercise would determine whether months of preparation and transformation would culminate in earning the title of United States Marine. The initial phase involved a 12-mile march through difficult terrain while carrying full combat gear. Sarah had learned to manage heavy loads through careful weight distribution and efficient movement techniques, but the physical demands were still enormous for someone of her size. She settled into a sustainable pace that would allow her to complete the distance without exhausting herself for the challenges that lay ahead. During the march, she found herself naturally falling into a leadership role within her assigned team. The other recruits had learned to value her tactical insights and problem-solving abilities, and they began looking to her for guidance when they encountered difficult terrain or navigation challenges. The first major test came at hour 8, when Sarah's team was tasked with crossing a deep ravine using only the equipment they carried. The standard approach would have been to use ropes and climbing techniques, but Sarah quickly identified that their available rope was insufficient for a safe crossing using conventional methods, while her teammates debated how to make the standard approach work with inadequate resources. Sarah studied the terrain with the analytical eye she had developed throughout training. She noticed that the ravine narrowed significantly about 50 meters upstream, and there were sturdy trees positioned on both sides that could serve as anchor points for a zipline system. Her proposed solution was unconventional but elegant. Instead of trying to climb down and back up the steep ravine walls, they would construct a controlled descent system that would allow each team member to cross quickly and safely while preserving their energy for later. Challenges. The construction required precise knots and careful testing, skills that Sarah had mastered during her preparation. She supervised every aspect of the setup while explaining each step to her teammates so they could assist effectively and learn from the process. The crossing was executed flawlessly, with each team member making it safely to the other side in record time. More importantly, they had conserved significant energy that would prove crucial during the later phases of the exercise. Other teams that had attempted more conventional crossings arrived at subsequent checkpoints already exhausted and behind schedule. The second major challenge came during the night navigation portion of the exercise. Teams were required to locate specific objectives in complete darkness using only compass and map, while avoiding simulated enemy patrols that would force them to restart if detected. Sarah's small size became a significant advantage during this phase. She could move through underbrush and concealment that would have been impossible for larger team members to navigate quietly. Her teammates learned to follow her lead, trusting her judgment about safe routes and hiding places. But the real test of her leadership abilities came when they encountered another team that had become lost and demoralized. The team had been wandering in circles for hours, and their morale was collapsing under the stress and exhaustion. Their designated leader had frozen under pressure, unable to make the decisions necessary to get his team back on track. Sarah made the difficult choice to assist the struggling team, even though helping them would cost her own team valuable time and potentially jeopardize their chances of success. She approached the other team's leader respectfully and offered to share navigation insights that could help them find their way. Working together, the two teams were able to locate their objectives and avoid the roving patrols that had been causing so much difficulty. Sarah's decision to help had created a larger, more capable unit that could handle challenges that might have overwhelmed either team individually. The dawn of the second day brought combat simulation exercises that would test everything the recruits had learned about tactics, teamwork, and decision-making under extreme pressure. Sarah's team was assigned to capture and hold a defended position while protecting simulated civilians and preventing enemy forces from achieving their objectives. The scenario was designed to have no perfect solutions, forcing teams to make difficult choices about priorities and acceptable risks. Sarah quickly recognized that success would require dividing their attention between multiple objectives while maintaining effective communication and coordination. Her approach was characteristically innovative. Instead of trying to accomplish all objectives simultaneously, she proposed a phased operation that would systematically eliminate enemy advantages while building toward their ultimate goals. The plan required precise timing and flawless execution, but it offered their best chance of success. The first phase involved using stealth and misdirection to eliminate enemy observation posts without alerting the main defensive force. Sarah's small size and quiet movement skills made her the obvious choice to lead this critical element of the operation. Moving through the exercise area like a shadow, she systematically neutralized the enemy observation network, while her teammates created diversions that masked her activities. The enemy commanders found themselves blind to the movements and preparations that were setting up their defeat. The second phase required a coordinated assault that would overwhelm the remaining defenders before they could reorganize their defenses. Sarah coordinated the attack through hand signals and whispered communications, ensuring that every team member understood their role and timing. The assault was executed with textbook precision, with each element of the attack achieving its objectives exactly as planned. The enemy position was captured with minimal simulated casualties, and all civilians were successfully protected throughout the operation. The final phase of the Crucible involved a demanding physical challenge that pushed every recruit to their absolute limits. Teams had to carry heavy simulated casualties across difficult terrain while under time pressure and harassment from instructors. Playing enemy forces, Sarah's team faced their greatest test when one of their own teammates suffered genuine heat exhaustion and could no longer carry his assigned load. The situation was serious enough that instructors were prepared to remove him from the exercise for medical reasons. Instead of accepting the loss of a team member, Sarah quickly reorganized their load distribution to compensate for their teammates' condition. She took on additional weight herself despite her small size, and motivated the other team members to push beyond what they thought were their physical limits. The solution required every team member to carry more than they had thought possible, but Sarah's leadership and example inspired them to achieve performance levels they had never reached before. The entire team completed the final challenge together with no one left behind. As the 54-hour ordeal drew to a close, Sarah and her teammates were exhausted but victorious. They had faced every challenge the exercise could present and had emerged stronger and more capable than they had been at the beginning. The instructors who had monitored their performance throughout the Crucible took detailed notes on Sarah's leadership abilities and tactical innovations. Her approaches to problem-solving and team motivation were unlike anything they had seen from a recruit, displaying maturity and capability that typically took years of experience to develop. During the final formation, when the results of the Crucible were announced, Sarah's team was recognized for outstanding performance in multiple categories. Their innovation, teamwork, and determination had set new standards for what could be accomplished when Marines worked together effectively. But for Sarah personally, the greatest victory was not any official recognition or award. It was the knowledge that she had proven herself capable of meeting any challenge the Marine Corps could present, and that she had earned her place among the finest warriors in the world through merit and determination, rather than sympathy or special consideration. The morning of graduation arrived with the kind of crisp, clear weather that seemed designed for momentous occasions. Sarah stood in formation with her fellow Marines, no longer recruits but warriors who had earned their place through months of testing, challenge, and transformation. The dress blue uniforms they wore represented more than clothing. They were symbols of belonging to an elite brotherhood that accepted members based solely on their ability to meet the Corps' demanding standards. As the ceremony began, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. The girl who had arrived at Paris Island uncertain and doubted by everyone, including herself, was about to receive recognition as one of the most outstanding Marines in her graduating class. The transformation seemed almost impossible to believe, Yet here she stood as living proof that determination and intelligence could overcome any obstacle. The commanding officer stepped forward to address the new Marines and their families who had gathered to witness this historic moment. His words spoke of honor, courage, and commitment. But Sarah heard something deeper in his message. He was talking about the fundamental truth that being a Marine was not about fitting a particular physical mold, but about possessing the character and determination to succeed when failure seemed inevitable. When her name was called to receive special recognition for outstanding leadership during the Crucible, Sarah stepped forward with confidence that would have been unimaginable just months earlier. The applause from her fellow Marines was genuine and enthusiastic, reflecting the respect she had earned through performance rather than sympathy. The commanding officer presented her with a certificate recognizing her tactical innovations and leadership abilities, but his words carried even greater significance. He explained to the gathered crowd that Sarah represented the best of what the Marine Corps stood for: the ability to find strength in unexpected places and to prove that excellence comes in many forms. Following the formal ceremony, Sarah was approached by several senior Marines who had been observing the graduation class. Among them was Colonel Patricia Williams, a career officer who had been following Sarah's progress since word of her Crucible performance had reached higher command levels. Colonel Williams explained that the Marine Corps was always looking for Marines who demonstrated exceptional problem-solving abilities and leadership potential. Sarah's combination of tactical thinking and proven ability to inspire others made her an ideal candidate for advanced training, opportunities that were available to only the most promising new Marines. The conversation revealed that Sarah's reputation had spread far beyond Paris Island. Her innovative approaches to training challenges had been documented and were being studied by instructors throughout the Marine Corps education system. Several of her techniques were already being incorporated into standard training protocols at other facilities. But perhaps more importantly, her story had become an inspiration for other recruits who faced their own challenges and doubts. Drill instructors were using her example to motivate struggling recruits, demonstrating that success in the Marine Corps was achievable for anyone willing to work hard enough and smart enough to overcome their limitations. As the graduation festivities continued, Sarah found herself surrounded by family members who had made the trip to witness her transformation. Her father, the construction worker who had tried to discourage her from joining the Marines, approached her with tears in his eyes and an expression of pride that spoke louder than any words could have conveyed. He admitted that he had been wrong to doubt her capabilities and apologized for not believing in her dreams from the beginning. The conversation was emotional for both of them, but it represented a healing of wounds that had motivated Sarah throughout her training. Proving herself had been important, but having her family recognize her achievements made the victory complete. Her younger sister, who had always looked up to Sarah despite their size difference, was amazed by the confident, capable woman her sister had become. She asked detailed questions about the training and challenges, clearly inspired by the example Sarah had set. The conversation planted seeds that would eventually lead her sister to pursue her own military career years later. The evening celebration provided opportunities for Sarah to reconnect with fellow Marines who had been part of her journey. Marcus Thompson, the large recruit who had initially dismissed her capabilities, sought her out to express his gratitude for the lessons she had taught him about leadership and teamwork. Many others had similar conversations with her, acknowledging that watching her succeed had changed their own perspectives about what was possible. When someone refused to accept limitations, others tried to impose on them. Her example had made them all better Marines and better people. Davidson, the recruit who had challenged her to the confrontation that ultimately proved her capabilities, approached her with genuine humility and respect. He explained that losing to her had been one of the most important experiences of his military career, teaching him lessons about judgment and character that he would carry for the rest of his life. The conversation led to a discussion about future career plans and aspirations. Davidson had been accepted for advanced training in military intelligence, and he credited Sarah's example with inspiring him to pursue intellectual challenges rather than relying solely on his physical capabilities. As the evening progressed, Sarah learned about the various paths her fellow Marines would be taking as they began their careers in the Corps. Some were heading to infantry units, others to specialized technical fields, and still others to training assignments where they would help prepare the next generation of Marines. Sarah's own future held exceptional promise. Based on her performance during training and her demonstrated leadership abilities, she had been selected for accelerated promotion opportunities and advanced tactical training. The Marine Corps had recognized her unique talents and was investing in developing them. Further, Colonel Williams approached her again during the evening to discuss specific opportunities that would be available to her. The conversation revealed career paths that Sarah had never imagined possible when she first decided to join the Marines. The Corps was offering her chances to attend advanced military schools, serve in specialized units, and eventually take on significant leadership responsibilities. But beyond the official recognition and career opportunities, Sarah had gained something even more valuable through her experience at Parris Island. She had discovered reserves of strength and capability she never knew she possessed, and she had learned that the only real limitations were those she accepted for herself. The transformation had changed not just how others saw her, but how she saw herself and what she believed was possible. The uncertain girl who had worried about fitting in had become a confident leader who understood that true strength came from within and could be developed through determination and intelligent effort. As the graduation day drew to a close, Sarah stood looking out at the parade grounds where she had struggled through so many challenging exercises just months earlier. The same obstacles were still there, but they looked smaller now, less intimidating, like problems that could be solved rather than barriers that could not be overcome. Her fellow Marines began departing for their various assignments and destinations, but the bonds forged during their shared struggles would last for their entire careers. They had learned to rely on each other and to recognize that every Marine brought unique strengths to any mission they faced together. Sarah packed her belongings carefully, including the certificates and commendations she had earned during training. But the real prizes were invisible: the confidence, skills, and character she had developed through months of pushing beyond what she had thought were her limits. As she prepared to leave Parris Island and begin the next phase of her Marine Corps career, Sarah smiled at the memory of those early weeks when others had called her dead weight and predicted her failure. They had been wrong about her potential, just as she had been wrong about her own limitations. The title of United States Marine was now hers by right. Earned through performance rather than given through sympathy, she had proven that being underestimated could be the greatest advantage of all. As long as someone was willing to do the work necessary to exceed every expectation placed upon them. The small-town girl from Texas was leaving as a Marine who understood that her size and background were assets rather than limitations. She had learned to use every apparent disadvantage as a source of strength, and she was ready to continue proving that true warriors come in all shapes and sizes. Her story would continue to inspire future generations of Marines who faced their own doubts and challenges. The girl they had called dead weight had become proof that determination, intelligence, and character could overcome any obstacle, and that the strongest Marines were often those who had to fight hardest to earn their place in the Corps.